Good morning as folks are joining. Good to see everybody. We have a lot of AI joining us this morning. We are recording for strategies. So we'll add this to the YouTube and what we've been doing every week Neri has been adding the recordings from the previous week at the bottom of our weekly email. So for a quick reference, you can see it there. It's great to see everybody. I just also want to share that yesterday, for 9:30 callers, we had Tracy Skelly on a while ago. I'll find it while we are talking, who created the Little Cocoa Bean Cafe in Jamaica Plain. And
I
yesterday there
thought of
was
that already in the morning.
the grand opening of the space in the Children's Museum, which has been an Oban Pan, has been a Stonewall Kitchen. We learned yesterday that it was also a McDonald's at one point at the Children's Museum. That it was now has now been transformed to be the Little Bean Cafe, Little Cocoa Bean Cafe, the Tot Cafe, and it was an incredible kind of kickoff opening. And there has been a campaign because if you remember when Tracy was here on the 9:30 call, she talked about the importance of having food not be a luxury or things that people can't afford, so
Yeah,
that there,
it's a great
when
for
you
the
come to the
economy.
cafe, that there will be opportunities for anyone to be able to go. So it was an incredible event. I met in person Michelle from Little Amigos yesterday, so it was great to see you there along with other folks. Mayor Wu was there. I'll add kind of Tracy's 9:30 call, but it was really great to be there. And today we are excited to hear from Matt. And Matt Jose from the Community Foundation of MetroWest, who I met at the Early Childhood Funder Collaborative Gathering that Brian Gold hosted and invited Aditi and I to come talk about our work and how it intersects. And Matt mentioned that he's listened into the 9:30 call, so it's great to have you here. I think this has been another really interesting feature that we did not obviously plan on for the 9:30 call, but to have the funding community join us here at the 9:30 call. During COVID, it was important to have funders here to hear what was really happening, kind of the day-to-day work as people were doing it, and kind of getting through COVID. And it's been such an incredible opportunity to have these conversations, I think, in a different way than sometimes how we think about funders. So we're so excited to have you here, Matt. And Matt also will talk about the youth and philanthropy, which he told me a little bit about, but it was sounded so interesting. So here you are. So Matt, the first question for everybody on the call is for you to tell us a little bit about you and how you came to be in your current role.
Thanks so much, Amy. My name is Matt Jose. I'm Director of Programs at the Community Foundation for MetroWest. I've been here for 5 years. I made a work transition in September of 2020. As you can imagine, that was a strange time to change jobs, but it was an exciting time. Previous to that, I had worked at an immigration nonprofit called Project Citizenship, which is doing amazing work right now, helping green card holders become naturalized citizens. And then I also used to work at a Boston law firm called Goodwin Procter, managing their corporate volunteer projects. So all of that brought me back to my community. I live in Framingham, and so working in my community in Metro West was super important for me, particularly when we went virtual in 2020. So I've been thrilled to work at the foundation for the past 5 years.
That's great. And so we'd love to hear an update about all the work that you're doing. And it'd be interesting to hear what you have learned as being part of the Early Childhood Funder Collaborative and maybe kind of end the 9:30 call. It'd just be interesting to hear your perspective.
Absolutely. I'll answer that first.
Great.
We're a community foundation, and what that means essentially is that we have endowed funds that we invest and then grant out to the nonprofit community. Rather than being from a family or an individual, our funds come from a collective of community members, and it's been that way since our inception for 30 years. And community members continue to invest in our work so that we can exist and then grant out more funds to the nonprofit community in order to improve the life of everyone that we serve. And community foundations do a lot of things in a lot of different issue areas. And one of the drawbacks to that is we need to be sort of experts in many different issue areas. So we lean really heavily on expert communities such as the 9:30 call, ECFC in order to be up to speed as we can on different issue areas. And over the past few years, we've made our first investments in the childcare space, and it's been incredibly helpful to listen into the 9:30 call to learn what's going on in the space, learn how funders can be a part of it, learn what's needed by the community, and really thanks to you and to Brian to be a resource for foundations that need additional services and additional expertise. We give in many different issue areas. Family, youth, and human services is maybe the largest bucket that we give in. We also do hunger relief grants, arts and culture, education, workforce development. So our hands are in a bunch of different areas. And in order to, as I said, improve quality of life for as many people as we can, our community of Metro West, we consider basically most of the communities between Boston and Worcester. They do include, Wellesley and Weston and places like that. But our charter is to really say that, there's communities of need such as Framingham, Milford, Waltham, Marlborough that really do get lost in the funding circle and the spheres for a lot of people who are giving to or working in Worcester and Boston. So we really try to lift up the communities that are really what we find are sort of lost sometimes in between Boston and Worcester. There's about 700,000 people who live in what we call our region. There's about 30 cities or towns that are in our catchment area. And since our inception 30 years ago, we've given out over $37 million in grant funding. But the real interesting part of that is 20 million of which has come in the last 5 years. So I would say,
Wow.
and we're not alone in that with other community foundations, and that the work has really picked up quite a bit over the last 5 years. Partnerships with the state for certain hunger relief grants that we gave out during COVID. Federal government CARES Act funding that filtered through community foundations was really essential in early 2020 and 2021. So community foundations have become a really neat vessel for funding in a lot of different issue areas.
And when you have kind of the community involved, can you talk a little bit about that process? How do you pull the money? Who decides where it goes?
Great question. So we use a distribution committee model. Most other community foundations do this as well, but we as a staff steward a committee of community members that really recommend and review our grants in order to decide where grants are distributed. We hold the expertise, we have the knowledge of the community, but really it's our charter to say the community needs to give out these grants, not us as a staff. So we work really hard to have a representative distribution committee that's geographically representative, that's ethically diverse, age diverse, issue area and expertise diverse. So each year we have about 25 to 30 individuals that work on reviewing grants. And as you can imagine, the amount of grants that this committee reads is just increasing year by year. So we separate them into subgroups based on different issue areas. We do site visits, and we really do quite a deliberative process in order to recommend to our board where grants should be distributed. So that model is pretty common for community foundations, and we find it's pretty critical to our work.
That's great.
Oh,
Yeah, what else?
yeah, I would say two things make us unique in the community foundation space. So the first is we have been leading our grant making through data over the past few years. So right before COVID started, we created what's called Impact MetroWest, a data indicator project that really gives us a report card on our region to learn when and where we should be giving grants and to whom and how what it affects. So I know my colleague Alyssa just dropped a link in the chat.
Yeah,
Basically, this is how we lead our work, and we try to make sure that we are understanding who lives in our community and why and when we should be giving grants in different areas. So please feel free to check that out. A couple other community foundations run indicators like this, but this is how we lead our work. And so through this data, we look at it all the time. And when we learn certain things, we try to tailor our investments and our grant making around what's popping up. So an example would be 3 years ago, we noticed that Framingham Elementary School's third grade reading statistics were not even on the charts. They were sort of so below proficiency that Boston was getting many headlines in early 2020 and 2021. There were five Framingham elementary schools that were below Boston proficiency. And so we partnered with a company called MathWorks, a Natick tech company, to really make investments in those Framingham schools. We brought in a literacy enrichment program that the district incorporated into its curriculum to give in their win block, the What I Need block, additional literacy services to right now it's about over 200 students a year who are involved in that each year. And so the goal of that is to figure out which students needed the extra literacy assistance and then find the partners that can do that work. So our role as the hub of identifying it through the data where a need was, finding the funding partner to help us, and then finding the intervention that could solve it is sort of the secret to being led through data we find. So I would say that that's one thing that makes us unique in the community foundation space. And then I'll get to what you anticipated, Amy, is that our youth and philanthropy program is probably the second thing that makes us the most unique among community foundations. So there's 16 community foundations in Massachusetts. I think there's something like 450 around the country. And I would say most don't run programs. They do grant making. And so we do both, which is pretty neat. And so
Hmm.
Alyssa, who's on the call with me, is actually a program manager, not a program officer. So in our staffing model, Alyssa runs our beyond the check programs for capacity building, and then she manages our youth and philanthropy program. But this is an opportunity for us to say, as a community foundation, let's help educate the next generation of youth in our community to make sure that they're going to be responsible philanthropists. That means giving their time, their talent, and their treasure in order to serve their fellow community members. And so it's really hard to fact check this, but we've been running it for 29 years of the 30 years that we've run. And we think it's one of the longest continually running youth philanthropy programs in the country because we've run it basically every year that we've been in existence. We have over 2,500 students who have been through it. Two graduates are on our staff. Alyssa is one of them, and then our our vice president of philanthropy, Caroline Murphy, is also a graduate of the program. So it's really full circle for us to have both of them on staff. It is a semester-long program which engages high schoolers and some middle schoolers in MetroWest to really learn about the needs of the community. We show them Impact MetroWest to learn about the data. We talk to them about how to do grant making so they know how to read applications, evaluate nonprofits. And then they actually serve as the distribution committee for our youth development funds. So they actually grant out, each program grants out $10,000 to two different nonprofits each semester. We actually give them 9,000. They have to raise an additional 1,000 so they get to understand how to do fundraising as well. And really, I think, yes, they learn all the structures of nonprofits, but the special sauce is the critical thinking and the collaboration, the consensus that they really need to build amongst each other. They can apply to the program from all over Metro West. So you've got kids from Wellesley deliberating with kids from Milford and from Framingham. And we think that that's a huge part of the success of the program is that they might not know anybody at the start of the program. At the end of it, they have to give a presentation to defend their decision making. And it's like they've known each other for months and they've built the trust between each other and really made special decisions by going through the applications, meeting the nonprofit leaders, and agreeing amongst 20 high schoolers to get them to agree on two nonprofits is really hard.
I bet.
But they get to do it every semester, and that's really the heart of the program is being able to listen and understand your peer, and then have them either agree to your ideas or agree to theirs and build that consensus. So that's really the unique part about us as we run this program, and that's really the special part of it, we think.
That is incredible. I'm just going to go to the chat for a minute. So Heidi Osgood Kaufman is here. Thank you, Matt, and others from the Community Foundation of Metro West for your support for our community. She's with the Metro West YMCA.
Oh, excellent.
Longtime 930 caller, Heidi. And Brian added the links were there. And Alyssa, thank you, is answering lots of questions in the chat. And Alyssa, I'd love to give you a moment as we go on to hearing from you. Amy Eisen, Advocacy Network Cohort 4 member, says, it's great to hear this funded perspective on our work. Do we have any sense how many children between 0 to 5 live in Metro West? How did the foundation decide to invest in their first early childhood program?
Thank you for the question, Amy. I'll touch on why I come to the 930 call and have met, with Brian many times, and then I would love Alyssa to just give her perspective on YIP as well. Um, we, I mentioned literacy work as one avenue of our data that we've been working on. Workforce development has been another for us quite a bit, and we've been trying to figure out industries in Metro West that can allow families to lift themselves out of poverty, which is really the outcomes we're looking for our workforce development work. We made investments in healthcare and building trades to try and encourage people to join those industries. And we kept coming up against two critical barriers to entry into those works. One is transportation. Obviously, the other, as you all know, is affordability and availability of childcare. And so we said, if we're going to continue to make investments in workforce development, it really behooves us to address one of the root causes that we're finding. Transportation, we thought was a bit too big for us, particularly in a suburban and urban region. So we said, let's try to tackle childcare in some capacity. So we said, with a workforce development angle, let's try and help encourage individuals to start a family childcare business. And so I know Maritas McLean is on the call, I believe. So we're partnering with Maritas and her team to get this work going. We're hoping in 2025 we can launch a couple cohorts for people to go through this process and then eventually start a family childcare business in Metro West. So we're thankful to all the work that's gone into how we got into this work, and then really happy to partner with Maritas on that. And so that's how we've gotten into this work. And then Amy, to your specific question, we don't know, the number of kids 0 to 5, which is one of the issues of being a community foundation, is we don't have all the data and statistics that we need to be isn't informed. But we're hoping that through our investments and our work going forward, we'll get a better sense of the market for our region.
And that's a good opportunity to think about partners, where, we know EECs has better data available. We used to collect it, but I think that that's a great example of how we can work in partnership. Um, the other thing we've also found is like when there's state available data, sometimes the real story is different. So I
Sure.
think thinking about community level information, that might be an interesting opportunity. Brian Dixon wonders how you choose the youth who are part of the philanthropy. And then I have another question from Kira.
Alyssa, would you love to answer that question?
Great, thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us this morning. And as Matt mentioned, as an alum of Youth in Philanthropy, or YIP as we call it, myself, it's a program that means so much to me and that I really believe in. And for me was the beginning of my philanthropic journey, which for me has resulted in a career in philanthropy. So I'm so grateful for it. And so the way that we select students for the program is we put out an open call for applications to the community in a lot of different channels, especially through the schools, but also a lot of word of mouth and local nonprofit partners, things like that. And students fill out an application, which includes, what school they go to, and then questions like, why do you want to participate in youth and philanthropy? Do you have any experience volunteering? And we love to get a wide variety of students, as we mentioned, from a wide variety of communities, and those who are longtime volunteerers and and those who have very little volunteer
Right.
experience. And so ultimately the technical answer to this question, how do we select, is more or less, if students are able to make the commitment to the program, they are accepted based on available space.
That's great.
Applications are open now for our fall programs, if I may be so bold to do a little plug. We have fall programs in Hopkinton, Natick, and Lexington. And if I also may answer another question that I saw in the chat,
Yeah.
students do not have to live in the town that is kind of the title of the program. The title of the program is simply where the program is.
Yeah.
And any student who lives or learns in Metro West can participate in any of the programs. And we provide a few different ones in the hopes that we can minimize the drive for as many people as
Right.
possible.
That makes sense. Kara wonders, do you have any tips for early education programs when applying for funding? This sector is so intersectional, and sometimes it's hard to know whether we fall under education, human services, youth development, just looking at the categories on your website.
Great question. I don't think I have a really perfect answer here, but I would say that now more than ever, I would say foundations. I've heard particularly from some private foundations that they're expanding their definitions for things widely right now to try to meet the moment.
Yeah.
We've seen other foundations, increase the percentage that they're going to give from their endowment this year. So I would say this year be bolder than you thought you may have wanted to be, just because I think a lot of people are trying to navigate how best to support the sector in this critical time. So I would say this is a different year than maybe the past 5 years that I've been working in community foundation space.
That's such good advice. Don Holly, great stuff. Metro Wester here. Do you also have channels to your policymakers based on your closeness to community needs? It's a great question.
Thank you, Don. We're trying to build that. As I would say, as I mentioned, 20 of our 37 million that we've distributed ever has come in the last 5 years. So I think more policymakers are starting to, see that we're a part of the space here. Karen Spilka, who's the Senate president, is a big friend of the foundation. So we at least have
That's
um,
great.
we're very lucky to have her in our region with such great access to obviously policy change. Senator Jamie Eldridge is also a change maker who lives in Metro West. So we're trying to build those relationships better. We haven't really, as a community foundation, needed advocacy work on the state level. Although, honestly, since COVID, we're starting to see that this is a need for community foundations in general to be at the table for more conversations. So since COVID started, actually, every community foundation has been in a partnership called the Massachusetts Coalition of Community Foundations. And so we're working together to try to figure out what projects we can do together. I would say it's a nascent collaboration right now, but we're trying to think of what the power of 16 community foundations can do going forward.
And I think I know a group that might be able to help you with advocacy. I think we're happy to help think about it because I think part of I have a question because I think sometimes I've watched people go from like program content expertise and like their dream job they think might to be at a foundation to give out money and then they get to the foundation and they realize how complicated and how there's always more requests for funding available. So Alyssa, maybe we can start with you. Have you seen some of that learning happen in your I mean you had a good runway in through the program, but I think it's hard, and I think especially right now, I was in a call this morning with pediatricians. Like, there's so much worry about public funding, and we know private funding cannot plug all the holes. But can you talk about this perception of how easy it is to give away money?
Sure. And I especially, for me, it's so rewarding to see the process through the eyes of the participants in the program, through the students. And so as part of the program, we ask that they, do a presentation to defend the selections that they've made. And very often as part of that, and there's a Q&A section for guests, and we have a panel who's asking them questions. And very often we ask them, what's the hardest part? And what's the hardest part of this process? And I think every single time I have asked that question, the answer has been saying no. Because there are so many organizations doing so many amazing things, and there's
Right.
no bad choices. And so kind of understanding there were some students who articulated it really well this semester, that it's not about who's doing better work or more work, but it's about aligning with the mission of the specific organization that you're representing, that's distributing the funds.
Right.
And that is how, unfortunately you have to draw the line somewhere, and so you have to think about your own priorities, even if there are other things to prioritize that are wonderful and important as well.
Right. Matt, I'll give you the last word here at 9:58. As we do that, I also just want to thank the funding community that has consistently shown up on the 9:30 call because I think the same way we talk about legislators and elected officials and policymakers being here and hearing directly from people who are doing the work in this kind of unfiltered advocacy way, not in a way that's like polished with talking points, but like are sharing the mic where we are really hearing from folks because I also think I appreciate the funding community, how you have heard that information and really acted on that information. And so it's one of the things of the 9:30 call that was most surprising to us. And also, I think we're most excited about how do we connect these communities that sometimes don't get the chance to hear directly from each other. So kind of with that, Matt, love to hear some closing thoughts from you and just really appreciate you both joining us today It was really so interesting to hear about your work.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Amy. I'm happy to provide more information about the Community Foundation to anyone who's interested, but I was thankful to be able to present about who we are today. I would just say of all the issue areas that we fund in, the expertise in this call and in this issue area is by far the one that I get to tap into easiest and get the most out of with the least amount of sort of input on my end. So the ability to tap into a 9:30 call and learn something very effectively needs to be replicated elsewhere in terms of workforce development or in other parts of education. And so I would just say that this is a model that as a community foundation that needs the expertise from outside of us needs to develop better so that we can have expertise in a variety of different issue areas and have partners to lean on, just like you all. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Matt. I think this is also a good example of how I'm always looking for talent for the 9:30 call and, just a kind of a quick connection that we made, and for you to come here and I think to join us and really appreciate what you've said. We've heard this in other circles about how do you just connect, how do you center lived experience and not exploit it, but make it really useful and, helpful and that even sometimes we think about advocacy, you have to be like talking to people or visiting people, like being parts of conversations and tables is just as effective. And sometimes it takes time, right? It's not immediate. It's building the relationships and really having that trust as we're working together. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa. It was so great to hear your perspective too. And Matt, I bet you'll see an increase in people applying to be part of YIP. I hope that will happen. Tomorrow we'll have sharing the mic. We have a couple of folks who shared updates with us that we will share tomorrow. But as always, it's a speakerless agenda, so we encourage folks to come and talk about what's on your mind. So we'll see everyone tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Amy.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.